Hello, this is Myra Elaine on the Buying Space Channel. I continue my series in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I'm in Luke chapter 22, verse 39. My last reading, I read about the Last Supper and Jesus saying that someone at the table had betrayed him. And it became an episode of who, him, not me. No, not me. But maybe you. Maybe it's what's his face over here. At the Last Supper, and also, Jesus told Peter that Peter was going to deny him, and Peter was like, "Oh no, not me." In his retort to the thought that he would betray Jesus. So we're picking up in verse 39. Jesus prays on the Mount of Olives. Then, accompanied by the disciples, Jesus left the upstairs room and went, as usual, to the Mount of Olives. There he told them, "Pray that you will not give in to temptation." He walked away about a stone's throw and knelt down and prayed, "Father, if you are willing, please take this cup of suffering away from me. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine." Then an angel from heaven appeared and strengthened him. He prayed more fervently, and he was in such agony of spirit that sweat fell from around him like great drops of blood. At last he stood up and returned to the disciples, only to find them asleep, exhausted from grief. "Why are you sleeping?" he asked them. "Get up and pray." "So that you will not give into temptation." So Jesus has been telling them this is serious, this is happening now, a change is occurring. He told them things are different now. You can't just walk around with your sandals. You've got to take food. You've got to take a sack. You've got to take a sword. He told them this at the Last Supper. But they were all arguing about who was the best. They didn't get it. They didn't get what kind of kingdom they were looking at in the future. They didn't realize it was a spiritual kingdom more than a physical kingdom on earth. And they were all wrapped up in their own egos while not listening to what Jesus had to say. They'd have listened to half of what he said. They wouldn't have fallen asleep. They would have been praying. But even as Jesus said this, a crowd approached, led by Judas, one of the 12 disciples. So everybody else went to sleep, and Judas slipped off. Judas walked over to Jesus to greet him with a kiss, but Jesus said, "Judas, would you betray the Son of Man with a kiss?" When the other disciples saw what was about to happen, they exclaimed, "Lord, should we fight? We brought the swords." One of them struck at the high priest's slave, slashing off his right ear. But Jesus said, "No more of this." And he touched the man's ear and healed him. And Jesus spoke to the leading priests, the captains of the temple guard, and to the elders who had come for him. I am some dangerous revolutionary," he asked, "that you would come with swords and clubs to arrest me? Why didn't you arrest me in the temple?" I was there every day, but this is your moment. The time when the power of a dangerousness reigns, of darkness reigns. So he's saying, he's pointing out, why are you coming in the dark of night to arrest me when I was at the temple every day in the light of day? And the answer is because the people would have protected Jesus. They would have revolted. They were afraid of that. They were afraid of losing their power. Peter denies Jesus. So they arrested him and led him to the high priest's home. And Peter followed at a distance. The guards lit a fire in the middle of the courtyard and sat around it. And Peter joined them there. And a servant girl noticed him in the firelight and began staring at him. Finally, she said, "This man is one of Jesus' followers." But Peter denied it. "Woman," he said, "I don't even know him." After a while, someone else looked at him and said, "You must be one of them." "No, man, I am not," Peter retorted. And about an hour later, someone else insisted, "This must be one of them because he's a Galilean too." But Peter said, "Man, I don't know what you're talking about." And immediately, while he was still speaking, a rooster crowed, exactly as Jesus had told him it would happen. At that moment, the Lord turned and looked at Peter. Suddenly, the Lord's word flashed through Peter's mind. "Before the rooster crows tomorrow morning, you will deny 3 times that you even know me." And Peter left the courtyard, weeping bitterly. The guards in charge of Jesus began mocking and beating him. They blindfolded him and said, "Prophesy to us. Prophesy to us. Who hit you at that time?" And they hurled all sorts of terrible insults at him. So basically, they're saying, if you're God, prophesy who's going to hit you next. How horrible. How insulting. And Jesus knew, in order to fulfill the new covenant, that he would have to suffer this. He knew he couldn't, as going through this process, he couldn't defend his disciples. Maybe it was meant to be that the disciples fled and Peter denied him. Because if we hadn't had Peter and later Paul, there might not be, Christianity might not have spread. So this was kind of meant to be. We all make mistakes in life. We all don't say things when we should sometimes, and sometimes we say things we shouldn't in the wrong moment. But here Peter has had his bad moment recorded in all of history for all of us to study over and over, where he denied Jesus. How many times have you had a chance to testify if you're a Christian and not done it? How would you like it if it was recorded in the Bible? Poor Peter. But because of this, because of his shame, because of his guilt, he never did it again. He never did it again. So sometimes you have to fall in life and pick yourself back up and realize what you've done that's wrong, and then not do it again. Or do your best not to do it again, like Peter here. And Peter went on to found churches. And without Peter's influence, we wouldn't have the churches we have today. Also Paul. But both of them. We needed both of them. And we needed the dynamic between the two of them in the letters of Paul to understand the development of Christianity as we know it today. We needed them to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ, to make a way forward. If it wasn't for Paul, potentially the Gentiles would not have a path to salvation. But ultimately, if it was not for the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, we definitely wouldn't. It was required that there was a blood sacrifice, just like in the Old Covenant. If there was a sin, there was a sacrifice. There had to be an ultimate sacrifice for us to have eternal salvation under the new covenant. If you're still practicing the Old Covenant, let Jesus be enough. Jesus was enough. If you are pointing to other people saying they're not saved when they proclaim that they're Christian and they obviously believe because of this technicality or that technicality, you're diminishing the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. And look at the redemption here. Peter denied him in his worst hour. Almost his worst hour. And turned and looked at him as soon as he did it. Betrayal with that personal look of, yes, you did. You denied me. And then later, Peter went on to see Christ after he was resurrected and was forgiven of his sin of denying Jesus in this horrible hour where he was being mocked and beaten. But he loved Peter so much. And you know what? He loves us all that much. This is why we need to be forgiving to each other. I'm not saying don't discuss issues that need to be discussed, but we can forgive each other and move on. That's the whole point. How could you not? I had a problem for a long time with the number of times, you're supposed to forgive somebody 7 times. And oh no, wait, it's 7 times 7. Or is it 77? Or is it, 550, whatever. But then I thought about Jesus Christ on the cross, forgiving those people that were actually killing him. He forgave the Roman soldier that put the spear in his side. He forgave the men that put the crown of thorns on his head and beat it down with clubs. No vengeance. Just love and forgiveness. All they had to do was believe that he was a Messiah. Whether any of them ever did, I don't know. There is a narrative about a Roman soldier that became a Christian. And I'm sure some of them did. But one of the Roman soldiers that was involved in his crucifixion that became Christian. And there's stories or narratives about Peter's captives and the people that martyred the disciples becoming Christian. Those accounts that are not in the Bible, I just call narratives. But they are, there are movies and stories about that happening. How real and how fictional they are, I would have to look at a case-by-case basis. But even whether they can be historically proven or not, if that were the case, if one of the Roman soldiers or half a dozen of the Roman soldiers that were participated in crucifying Jesus came to be Christians, what a miracle that would be. All they had to do was believe. And all of us have that miracle available to us. All you need to do is have the faith to believe that Jesus Christ died for your sins. How wonderful is that? You all have a wonderful and blessed day.